There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. He was not a king, not a prophet, not a priest, but the Bible says something rare about him. Job was blameless and upright, a man who feared God and shunned evil. He was wealthy, respected, and deeply devoted to God. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, large flocks of animals, many servants, and influence in his land. By all standards, Job was a good man living a good life. Every day, Job would rise early in the morning and offer sacrifices for his children, not because they had sinned openly, but because Job said in his heart, "Perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." This tells us something important. Job's relationship with God was not casual. He feared God deeply, even for sins that were hidden. Then the Bible shifts our view from the earth to heaven. One day, the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. God asked Satan where he was coming from, and Satan answered, "From roaming through the earth and going back and forth in it." Then God said something that changed Job's life forever. "Have you considered my servant Job?" God testified about Job himself. He said there was none like him on the earth, blameless, upright, fearing God, and avoiding evil. But Satan replied with accusation. He said Job did not fear God for nothing. According to Satan, Job only served God because God had blessed him, protected him, and prospered him. Satan claimed that if those blessings were removed, Job would curse God to his face. God allowed the test not because Job was weak, but because Job was genuine. In one single day, disaster struck Job like a flood. A messenger came, told him that enemies had stolen his oxen and donkeys, and killed the servants. Before that messenger finished speaking, another arrived saying fire fell from heaven and burned up his sheep and servants. Then another came to say raiders had taken the camels and killed the servants. And while that one was still speaking, the final messenger came with the most painful news of all. Job's sons and daughters were gathered in their eldest brother's house when a great wind struck the house, and it collapsed, killing all of them. In a moment, Job lost his wealth, his livelihood, and all 10 of his children. Job stood up, he tore his robe, he shaved his head, he fell to the ground not to curse God but to worship. And Job said words that still echo through generations. "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." The Bible says that in all this, Job did not sin or charge God with wrongdoing. But the trial was not over. Again, Satan came before God, and again God spoke of Job's integrity. Satan responded by saying that skin for skin, man will give everything he has to save his life. Satan claimed that if Job's body were touched, he would surely curse God. God permitted Satan to afflict Job's body, but not to take his life. Job was struck with painful sores from the sole of his feet to the crown of his head. The pain was unbearable. He sat among ashes, scraping his sores with broken pottery. Then his wife, overwhelmed and broken, said to him, "Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die." Job replied with wisdom that many fail to speak in suffering. "You are speaking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" And again, the Bible says Job did not sin with his lips. Then his friends came. At first, they did the right thing. They sat with him in silence for 7 days and 7 nights because his pain was so great. But when they began to speak, they began to accuse. They believed suffering was always the result of personal sin. They told Job to confess what he had done wrong. They said God does not punish the innocent. They insisted Job must have sinned secretly. Job defended his integrity. He cried out in confusion. He questioned why God would allow such suffering. He did not understand what was happening, but he refused to deny God. Job poured out his pain honestly. He wished he had never been born. He asked why God allows the righteous to suffer while the wicked seem to prosper. This is one of the most powerful lessons in the story of Job. Faith does not mean silence, and questions do not mean rebellion. Job never stopped believing God was real. He never turned to idols. He never cursed God. But he was honest about his pain. After long debates, God finally answered Job not with explanations, but with revelation. God spoke from the whirlwind. He asked Job questions that revealed how small human understanding truly is. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Have you commanded the morning since your days began? Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loosen Orion's belt? God did not explain Job's suffering. Instead, he revealed his greatness. Job realized something profound, that God is sovereign even when life does not make sense. Job humbled himself and said, "Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know." He repented not of sin, but of assuming he could fully understand God. Then God turned to Job's friends and rebuked them. He said they had not spoken rightly about him as Job had. God instructed them to offer sacrifices, and he told Job to pray for them. This is powerful. Job, who had suffered so much, the Bible says the Lord restored Job's fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. Job received new sons and daughters. His latter days were greater than his former days. He lived a long life and saw his children and grandchildren to the fourth generation. But here is the deepest truth of Job's story. Job did not serve God for blessings. He served God for who God is. Job teaches us that suffering is not always punishment, that silence does not mean absence, and that God can be trusted even when answers are withheld. God may not explain everything, but he always remains faithful. If you are suffering, Job's story is for you. If you feel confused, forgotten, or tested beyond understanding, remember Job. God is watching. God is sovereign. And in his time, restoration comes.